As you can see, this is going to be a very different episode of Cinema Cemetery. Usually it's me talking about something going on in the industry or a practice, more of an abstract idea, often over this video footage of what seems to be like impressionistic looking clouds and swirling, almost alien looking landscapes. So that video footage is actually from my first attempt at creating an old practical visual effects technique called a cloud tank. And in this episode, I'm not really going to get into the history or use of a cloud tank necessarily. It was used in many films in film history. You've probably seen a lot of them, like Indiana Jones, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Ghostbusters, all the way even up to the modern times, which it's really not used so often anymore, but I believe it was used for the swirling vortex in Thor. It does see a little bit of use here and there, but it's definitely fallen out of favor as, unfortunately, so many amazing and really tactile practical effects have. This is an effect that you can, with a little bit of trouble, replicate in your very home. So yeah, I'll show you how I've done it. So if you try it, I'd love to see the footage you come up with. In order to do this, you're gonna need some things. Maybe you've already got them, but you might need to run out and get some of these. These items include a fish tank, rock salt, straws or rubber tubing, garbage bags, and a large syringe or turkey baster or eyedroppers, something capable of ejecting liquid at some level of force. High viscosity liquid to be the clouds in your shot. So whether it's like thickened up tempera paint or milk, whatever you've got on hand for the clouds, it's if you're doing something that is specifically supposed to emulate clouds, then you'll want something that's white. Or if you're making your own sort of alien landscapes, then use whatever, honestly, whatever you can find. For me, here I've got this coconut milk. If you want some kind of like rain or particles falling down, we can also add this glitter we've got here. Food colorings, you name it. You can just absolutely go nuts. For best results when shooting this, you're also going to need some lights, whether it's a lamp with the shade taken off, or some color changing LEDs, which is what I use. Rock salt. It's just the sort of stuff that you throw on the sidewalk. You can get a big bag of it at Home Depot or whatever your regional equivalent is. You're also going to need some black fabric, maybe a black t-shirt or a sweater. The elements are easier to use when filmed against a dark, preferably black background. So I've got some black felt here I've put up, and we'll get more into why that's important later. Also, you are going to need a camera, whether it's your phone or a video camera, preferably something that shoots at a higher frame rate, simply because the liquid evolving is not going to look very cloud-like. It's going to look very low viscosity, and clouds, they don't move very quickly. They sort of flow at their own pace, and so if you capture it in slow motion, it's going to look much more massive and have this sense of scale. I'm shooting this with a Canon Rebel EOS T3i. It's not the most amazing camera for video recording, but it's what we have, and I think the highest frame rate it records is 60 frames per second at a reduced resolution. You'll probably want a tripod or something to prop your camera or phone up on, as you're gonna get best results if your camera is not moving. All right, let's get to it. The first thing we're going to want to figure out is how much of the tank we should fill with salt water. Now you're going to want to give yourself enough room to shoot up at an angle, simulating looking up at a layer of clouds in the sky. Now the liquid that we're going to be injecting using the eyedropper and the bendy straws, we want to inject it as close as possible to the layer of salt water in order for the high viscosity liquid, the coconut milk, to float on top of the salt water. The only way to really pull this off is to not disturb the layer of fresh water and the layer of salt water. So that's why we need a straw that's gonna come close to that, and then we can just pull the straw out instead of having my hands down there, which will displace a lot more of the water. I've cleaned out the fish tank. It's ready to go. Now we're going to boil some rock salt. A cooking pot. We're going to boil the rock salt completely. So how much salt do we need? The less salt you put in it, the less of a hard stop there's going to be for the liquid you inject. So if you want perfect little clouds that float magically in the middle, then you're going to need very salinated water. If you want clouds that sort of seep and go between the two and are constantly moving and fluctuating and evolving, then you'll want less salt in your water. For this test, I'm going to use a bit more salt just to create that hard line between the saltwater layer and the freshwater layer. Ugh. I'm gonna put 2 cups in. Honestly, this is probably overkill. Fill this up with water. Okay, and get this sucker boiling. This might take some time and you may have to stir it somewhat frequently. Don't use a wooden spoon because the wood is gonna soak up the salt. I didn't learn that from experience. I did. So I have successfully completely boiled the rock salt into the water. There's gonna be some nasty scum, depending on what kind of rock salt you use, on the top of the water here. So what I'm gonna do is just put the pot in the sink and then run cold water around it to try and lower its general temperature a little bit, so that way there's not as much of a gap between the water and the glass. Hopefully this isn't a disaster. Into the tank. Okay, I see that I've made a critical error in terms of water estimation. This is gonna take a couple bucketfuls. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mix in some regular water with this. Okay, so I've diluted the salinated layer a little bit. You'll notice that it's super cloudy. You just have to wait until it clears. In the meantime, we have things we can do. You're gonna need to get a trash bag and flatten it out. The idea is we want to be able to create a pocket for the fresh water to go into, because if I just pour the fresh water into here, it's going to mix with the salinated layer, and we want to keep a clear separation between the two. Once we let them sit, you're able to slide the bag out. You will be able to see the difference between the 2 layers of water. They will coexist without mixing. It's pretty sweet. Now what you might end up having to do is taping the sides of the trash bag to the sides of the tank, simply because the fresh water is going to weigh a lot, right? We want to protect this boundary. And so now we're just going to pour the fresh water straight into here. So I've got this as full as I want it. The entirety of the water is about up to here. We've got to let this sit. We've got to let this salt layer become clearer, and we've got to let the 2 layers sort of get used to each other. So in the past, I have let this sit for 4 hours. I'm gonna try it after 1 hour and then cry after it doesn't work. 1 hour later, you'll notice the saltwater layer hopefully is a little clearer. And the goal is to slide this plastic out with as little stress to the water as possible. All right. Okay, now ideally, I should be able to just sort of slide this on out. There is a distinct difference between the 2 types of water here. Okay, so as you can kind of see, there are 2 different types of water here. There's this fresh water, and then the salt water. You can see the line. The next thing that we are going to want to do is get the lights set up. Well, let me try it with the lights off. Yeah, okay, that's gonna be pretty cool. So I'm going to put the camera right here in front, and it's gonna be shooting up.